Hi, it's Rich Hoffman here. A lot of comments when you start seeing all the leftists coming unhinged, the people who want a progressive world order. I call it the warm blanket of socialism. The timid types out there who aren't very self-reliant, and if you're a self-reliant type, you have to try and put yourself in the shoes of people who aren't so much that way. If you had a background that taught you self-reliance, you learned how to tie your own shoes early in life, you tend to be inclined to change tires in your car, and you do your own brakes and cook your own food. Those kinds of people tend to vote Republican, and people who can't do very well for themselves, who are kind of lost and want the warm blanket of social collectivism to hide their timid personalities. They're very rambunctious because they want that social blanket, and they feel that Republicans are taking that blanket away. It's just like if you're kind of scared of the dark and you're sleeping and you got the covers pulled up around your neck. That's the typical liberal. And if some conservative comes into your bedroom and pulls those blankets off, and now you're laying there open to the world in the dark, it's scary to those kinds of people. And that's me trying to put it softly, the kind of the problems we're seeing. So I try not to hate those people because they might not have been taught to be self-reliant. They might not have been taught to do for themselves. They might have been taught to be victims of circumstances for which they're perpetually fearful. And the best way for them to not be fearful is to climb into the warm blanket of collective social interaction where they're in a room full of people who aren't going to try and hurt them, or at least that's what they think. And they find solace in that collective goo, being part of the soup of society. They don't want to stand out. They want to get hammered. They want to be a nail getting hammered by a giant social hammer. And they certainly don't want that hammer to be the Republican Party, the MAGA movement, conservatives in general. So when you look around and you hear them fearful now that Trump's in office and the Trump policies are pro-capitalist, and they certainly favor people who do for themselves, people who go out and start businesses, people who take care of their houses, keep their families together, want to raise their kids well, even to the point where they homeschool their children because they can't trust the public schools. People who are divorcing themselves from the public safety net. That means there's fewer people out there to give all those timid types cover. So when people pull away from them, it's like pulling those blankets away from a timid person in the dark. All the people who go and homeschool their children and want less taxes paid to social services, they'd rather just spend the money on things they want to do in life. They don't want public transportation. They want their own individual car. They don't want to go drive downtown to go to the grocery. They want a grocery up in the suburbs. They want to be in the suburbs, away from the chaos of blue-run cities. The people who are in those places are like the communists of the Soviet Union or China or somewhere else, where they had barriers, like East Berlin. They had barriers. They'd shoot you for trying to go to the West Berlin or trying to flee the Soviet Union and to go interact with the West, because they didn't want people defecting from their socialist, communist tendencies. Because it takes that warm blanket away from them. And so you have a whole now generation of kids that were raised in public education, and they were raised to be liberals. They have years of declining families. They don't know who their moms and dads are because their moms and dads have new spouses, step parents. A lot of their social framework has been stripped away from them. They can't really trust the foundations of society because they can't even trust their own families, because sometimes some weekends are spent at dad's house and dad's got a new girlfriend, and some weekends are spent at mom's house and mom's got boyfriends, several boyfriends. They don't know who's the new guy. There's always somebody new and coming in, going. And it's disruptive to children. And now we have several decades of this. And this is a psychological commentary as much as a political one. And I pointed out because people to say you hate liberals is one thing. To hate what they become and hate what they do to society is very valid. To hate them as people, you have to understand what made them. And we had lots of attacks on the social framework of our civilization that has made these people. And part of that is this the commentary that you see. They're so angry now that the blankets have been stripped away from them that people are seeing them on social media. And they have some common characteristics. And people are noticing, and they all have this some of the worst of them, some of those vocal of them, also have the nose rings and the earrings and the big piercings in their earlobes. They're covered in tattoos. And, biblically speaking, these are people who have been taught to desecrate their bodies. There's a movement. You could call it the work of demons. You could call it, if you're a Scientologist, you could call it corrosive thetans that have feeding off a parasitic soul and bringing evil to it. You could call it bad kami, bad jinn, whatever culture you're coming from globally. You could see a supernatural influence that has crept into people's individualities and wants them to desecrate the temple of their existence, their bodies. And the Bible addresses this many times, and there's a reason why there's a push to be clean and tidy and not to desecrate your body with tattoos and all kinds of crazy body piercings, is because that's a path to live in a good life. And if you take care of your own temple, then other people will cascade to it, be a good influence on society in general. But those who are enemies of conventional wisdom and orthodox behavior and good, healthy social circumstances want those temples, those human temples, desecrated. And that is at the heart of liberalism. That's why they push the LGBTQRS agenda, desecration of family values. So you can't go out and build a family because you apply sexual relationships to all kinds of perversions that are destructive towards individual happiness. You're just feeding the primal urge to be an anti-civilization character. And so all these people who are out there rallying against the Trump administration and Trump policies and the conservative view of the world, and people who want to impose that on them, people who want to rip away the safety blanket of nice, safe society that they want to pull up around their neck and feel like they have some social cadence to hide in, that's been stripped from them, and they're angry about it. And the ones who are most angry are those who have accepted the desecration of themselves, their temples. They're usually covered in tattoos and body piercings and crazy earlobe earrings. Who goes out and gets a nose piercing? I mean, how goofy is that? But that's the trend. And the trend started from an anti-civilization message, a return to the primitive, a beholding of the indigenous people, that we need to give back the land that we took from those indigenous people who were piercing themselves in all kinds of weird ways to appeal to the spirit world and the gods of existence and make them feel like we're one of them by appeasing their egos in the spirit world. And that means desecrate our own bodies. That's why they said in the Bible not to do it. That's why you're not supposed to have other gods before the main God, before Yahweh. Worship no other gods, because the goal was to keep everybody's focus on the task at hand. Protect your temple, your body, the essence of your soul, and don't let it be desecrated. And when you do, then you invite all these other parasites into your life. And then when you do that, you adopt liberalism to hide the mistakes you make. And then it becomes a major social circumstance. So it's not just a matter of personal belief, a belief that I can believe what I want to. You can believe what you want to. We're all free to believe what we want to believe, and it's free speech and freedom of religion and all that stuff. No, when your belief system starts impacting the world at large in a destructive way, then it becomes everybody else's business. So then you have to analyze, well, why do the people who scream most about all these policies that we voted for, that the Trump administration is representing and imposing, immigration reform, for instance, and blowing up the drug boats and making capitalism more of a centerpiece of the American economy, as it should have been always. The Adam Smith level of capitalism, and removing Karl Marx and all the socialist, communist, and over Marxists that are all over our education system, from high level education to grade school education. It's full of these Marxists, people who have openly embraced Karl Marx. Really bad. And we're turning away from that. And the people who are most angry, and they're all over social media and TikTok, and they're doing all kinds of things to get attention. It's scary to people who aren't like that, who are conservative, to look at these people and see that they have embraced this primitive, almost indigenous society mindset. And they have the nose piercings, even nose piercings through the bridge of their nose, eye piercings and tattoos all over themselves. The desecration of their temple. And when you desecrate your temple, you're first saying, spiritually, anything goes, anything can come in. And then once you realize what that means, now you can't even build a life around self-reliance at all. You're totally castigated from the authority of your own sanctity and soul's journey through existence. You've ruined the vehicle that it resides in. And then what are you going to do about that? Well, then you adopt liberal ideology, hide in collectivism, hide in mass groups, and you expect society at large to protect you from judgment of your bad decisions. And that's at the heart of liberalism. So when you hear all these people really upset that all these things are happening, they tend to have certain characteristics. And the Minnesota rallies have certainly shown the ugliness of the kind of people who vote Democrat. The down and out types, and they make a lot of social mistakes that have overtly revealed themselves to be impediments to society, because they don't maintain self-reliance, they don't do for themselves, and they don't have a government of self-reliance. They want collectivism, they want government to give them power as a parental figure, and they want to perpetually be children to that parental government. And they want to hide all their bad decisions behind that government. And so they're mad when we're rallying against it, because they can't hide it anymore. So they're showing their ugly selves. And they express themselves through attempted assassinations. Most of the people that have been involved in these assassination attempts or assassinations overtly have bad decisions in their portfolio. And then ones that are out there protesting loudest and throwing themselves in front of cars and trying to block highway access, trying to keep criminal immigrants in the country, fighting to keep the world dangerous so they can have a big government there to hide behind. And the way to keep the government big and powerful is to have all these elements of chaos looming in the background. And it all starts from bad decisions they personally make that is then represented in the way they desecrate their bodies. Exactly why the lesson is in the Bible. It's not just to preach to people and say, well, you should get circumcised and wash your hands a lot and make sure you don't desecrate your body. Honor your parents and be faithful to your wife and all those kinds of good ideas. People who can't go back and say, yeah, I did all that good stuff. They made the mistakes. They got to look at themselves in the mirror every day. And by resorting themselves to kind of an indigenous viewpoint, they embrace the collectivism of old that permeated society before American society brought capitalism to flourishing individual rights to people who would embrace it. And the people who resided in collective unity found themselves on the out, as they do now, because it's the human nature to reside towards individual input and merit, not to hide. It's not the way society has ever been designed to go. It will never go there. Only when the failures of existence collect themselves together in mobs can they give the illusion of it? But the mass mistake is that they both bolster their numbers up because they have to hide their bad decisions in life, and reflected by the way they desecrated their bodies. And that is a common trait when you see the protests and the kind of people who are out there screaming for fairness. What they're really screaming for is a way to cover up all the bad things they've done to themselves and the horrible decisions they've made along the way, because a lot of people didn't teach them the right way to go. They might not have had the right influence for a lot of family structure breakdowns. Not everybody had the ability to have the great benefits of making good decisions, and they're resentful of it. But that doesn't mean you build your society around their resentments and their mistakes. We can help them if they want to listen, but we can't destroy society just to make them feel better. And based on the way that they have destroyed their own bodies, they want to do the same thing to the country and to everything they touch, because that's the only way they can feel good about themselves. And we're not going to destroy our society just to appease them. And that's kind of what it all boils down to. Anyway, it's Rich Hoffman here. Share, subscribe, make tomorrow a better day. If you ever read my book, The Gunfighter's Guide to Business, I think you'll love it. Anyway, have a good day. See you later.